week 8, and we're gonna add a heap of corals to the 12-week reef. But first, we have to test to prove to Shane from Sustainable Reefs that this reef is actually ready. So let's get testing. Last week in video 7, we had Shane help us install the e-coral dosing pump and help test the main elements, which by now you guys should all know by heart: calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium. To our surprise, we found out that even though the 12-week reef only had a basic cleanup crew and 1 fish, it was still consuming those 3 major elements. Now, after using the Coral Essentials online calculator and their primary care range, we could program our e-coral dosing pump to smoothly hit our target ranges for each element. And before Shane left, he gifted me a tiny little coral and promised that if we can hit all of our targets and keep them there, he would personally fly down this week with an awesome swag pack of corals for us. So how did I go throughout this week? Let's take a look. All right, day 1 of testing. That dosing pump should be doing its thing, bumping up the numbers of all the levels. And I really want to make sure I get this right because I want to get my hands on those corals that Shane was promising. So I want to make sure I test my calcium levels. Because of that dosing pump, it's really quite a hands-off system for me. I just need to keep testing every other day to make sure the levels are definitely coming up at a good rate. All right, so the levels I'm going for is calcium at 420, mag at 1340, and alkalinity of 8. All right, that means that our calcium is sitting at 400, magnesium is sitting at 1320 right now, and our alkalinity is at 7.6, which means obviously all of these are low, but levels are slowly coming back up. Day 3, and we've hit 420, 1340, and 8, which means we're spot on. But that means we're only halfway there. Shane wanted stability, so what I've got to do now is turn down the dosing pump and maintain these levels for the next 2 days. And if I can do that, I'm gonna call Shane. Day 4, and this is the moment of truth. I've turned that dosing pump down, so let's hope that I nailed those levels. If this goes the right color and the levels are the exact same as 2 days ago, I'm gonna get on the phone to Shane and get him to book that flight. That's the final test, and that looks right, which means our cal is sitting at 420, our mag is 1340, and our alkalinity is at 8. Time to call Shane, I think. Hello. Hey, Shane, have I caught you at a good time?
Oh, no, that's all right, but who's this?
It's Brady calling from the 12-week reef.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, how you been?
Good, dude. My levels on this tank are banging. So, I was hoping you'd be able to book a flight and come and see me over the next couple of days.
That sounds awesome. Yeah, and I'm so glad that your levels are all good, and yeah, I'll book a flight straight away for you.
Sweet, so I'll catch you tomorrow?
Yeah, why not? Let's go.
Sweet, catch you then.
Bye.
Yes! Sweet, we're good. So Shane's just touched down at the airport, and we've just learned that he's a little bit lost. So we're gonna go and try and find him. That's him! You lunatic. Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a little, only a week.
Is this my corals?
That is your corals indeed.
Beauty.
Go jump in.
Now that I've dragged you to the reef, can we add some corals yet?
Maybe. All right.
How'd you even get this here, dude?
They went straight into carry-on luggage. Airlines are usually pretty good with it, especially when you're nice to them.
So that wasn't even check-in, that was literally you stowed that above?
Yeah, in the overhead lockers, yeah. Do you want to open it?
I would love to. Oh, look at that. I didn't think you'd bring this much. This is a real care package, dude.
Well, from what I've heard, you've done well keeping the parameters well. So that one's a little red Goniopora.
What are those little things that they're on?
These plugs. So these are a ceramic plug that basically we propagate all of the corals on there, and that shows us that they are farmed. And that one is a sarcophyton leather coral. It's all toadstool leather, they sometimes call those as well.
You know what? I think you need to change your shirt, and you're gonna blend in otherwise.
Oh yeah, Roger. All right.
Go get changed, go get changed. I'm gonna show you guys some close-ups pretty soon. That's better, bit more color.
That is another Goniopora. It looks very similar to the other one, it's only green. So that one's red, that one's green. We're gonna make some coral gardens with those. So we're gonna glue them really close together and make some little gardens of very similar corals. And those ones are a soft coral called a zoanthid, or zoa, as we call them. They're not really a coral, but.
Right, a zoa. Oh, actually, yeah, I've seen these ones before a couple times. So zoa's over here then.
Yeah. And that one there is Samacora.
Samacora.
So that one's called Danger's Samacora, actually, after me.
That's a special Samacora.
Been around a while. And that one is a Fimbriophilia. It's called a hammer coral or anchor coral, as you'll most commonly hear it referred to. That one is a soft coral. So that one's going to go down here next to that toadstool. It's a different type of soft coral called a Sinularia.
That one's different. Another Goniopora?
Very close. It's a Duncanopsamia or Duncan coral. You have Duncan and Benny.
All right, easy to remember.
That one is a hammer coral. We can put him right there.
2 Samacora, 3 hammer, 4, 3 Zoa.
Goniopora. Those ones?
These are Goniopora.
Yep.
Which one's the Zoas? Those ones.
Zoas.
And those are just random soft coral?
Yeah, Sarcophyton and Sinularia. And this one is a Duncanopsamia.
Yeah, sweet. Cool, I can list that off easy.
Okay, the names will take years, and then taxonomy will go and change them on. You have to learn them again. Some of them have been here or been in the farm for about a year. Some of them have been there for a lot longer than that, and some of them have been within the hobby for over 20 years, like that Dangerous Samacora there, that's circulating around the entire hobby. So it's a clone of a clone of a clone of a clone, and they've been here forever.
But it's still the exact same.
Genetically, it's the same, yeah.
Wow. So it's plants in a way.
Yeah, exactly like taking cuttings off plants. We just take cuttings off our corals and we just keep on growing them forever.
But they take ages to grow.
Some of them are really fast. Like these zoas, they might grow really fast and spread everywhere. So that we'll learn about when we put them in your tank. We'll put them somewhere so they don't take over.
Right, so we have to factor all of the growth rate of all of these in, and obviously the color and the typing of them all. Depending on where we want to place it and how we want them to grow, you have to put them in certain clumps.
Yep.
So can I just start tipping this in?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just tip the water in there and the corals. And if it needs a little bit extra water to just cover them, we'll put some from that display into there. And then we'll set up this little siphon hose as well and set a slow drip acclimation up for maybe about half an hour to an hour. After that, they're ready to go in and we can glue them in and we can learn a bit about each coral and where it goes. The reason that they're okay right now out of the water is because they're farm grown. They're actually really resilient. They're used to conditions that are a lot more unstable, which is kind of calling myself out for not having a stable system in this Sustainable Reefs farm. But no one's perfect. So these corals aren't used to the ocean conditions, and that's because we don't collect out of the ocean anymore. Okay. We only grow our corals. We still use the occasional wild coral to get a new strain in, or if we find a color variant or a new species that we don't have yet and we don't dive anymore, which is a bit of a shame for ourselves because we really like diving. But in general, we don't need to wild collect anymore because we have the ability to continuously grow and have a permanent supply just by growing corals. And while that's dripping, what do you reckon we give this glass a clean? It's pretty gross.
Yeah, I'll clean the inside of the glass and the outside. Hey, look, I see like a little snail thing in here.
Yeah, there is. That's a little hitchhiker. That's got a turbo snail. Did you put one in already? No, it doesn't look like it. Oh, well, there you go. You get a free turbo snail. Let's get stuck into cleaning that glass.
All right, let me grab some rags and a cleaner, a little magnet cleaner.
If you go too close to the sand, you can actually pick up sand in between the two magnets and you're gonna have a really scratched up tank. So be really careful of that. But yeah, a little bit of a clean like this, up in the sides and the corners. Go all the way around there and all that is disappearing. You can go lower, you can go lower, you can go lower, you can go lower, yeah.
He's been doing this for a little while.
Yeah, you can go around corners. I'll show you how to go around a corner. All right, so you just jump it.
Oh, sick. I didn't even realize there was that much grime there. All of that, I couldn't even see anything.
We can pull that tube out now and break that siphon. Because there is so much water being taken out of there, can you hear that tank gurgling? We took approximately 10 litres out, so we're going to put about 10 litres back in. We're going to just tip that straight in the top there. So we've got this salt water here, and that'll fill that back up and stop the gurgling sound, and it'll keep the salinity right. So if you're taking salt water out, you need to put salt water back. You've got your RO reservoir on the back you need to keep an eye on, and normally just keeping a check on your salinity levels as well. It's time to put these corals in.
How do I even put these in? Do we have glue?
Glue.
What about these little cork things?
The cork things there, so the stem on there, we're going to cut the stem off sometimes with these crescent cutters. That little stem there on the frag plug, as we call that, sometimes you can actually get it to fit down in a little hole, a natural hole in the rock, and we don't even have to glue it. You can just kind of wedge it down in there and it stays exactly where you put it.
Okay, helpful.
I think, personally, we're going to make some coral gardens. So we're going to group the corals that are similar to each other together, and this reduces any risk of them stinging each other. So you can see this tank really nicely. What do you reckon about that arm there, that one on this side? What do you reckon put some hammer corals along that edge there?
That sounds good. Do hammer corals grow up really big?
Maybe like that big, this size. Where these corals are found is vastly different to where another type of coral is found. And to say that X coral likes high light, so put it up the top, and X coral likes low light, so put it down the bottom, you're still only talking about 2 foot difference versus in the ocean, you could be talking up to 40 meters of difference.
Right.
So the pile levels or light levels that are here and here aren't that much different, whereas in the ocean, from the surface to the deeper water corals, it's hugely different.
So don't stress about it too much.
Don't stress about it too much. And so these hammer corals can go right at the top or right at the bottom, and they'll be totally fine.
Does anything bite these guys?
Something could knock it out just like that.
Yeah.
Benny could come along and knock that out as well. All right, so put a little bit of glue just along that edge there, because I noticed that, and then you put that straight in there. When you put it in, you give it a little bit of a wiggle and make sure you press the glue onto the rock.
Is the glue going to be super visible?
No, that'll grow it. The coralline algae will grow over the top of it. So pull it up and give that glue a little bit. Make sure the glues sort of break the surface. There we go. You smush it with your finger like that. I'm going to grab this last hammer coral here. And I think we slip that little stem off there. All right, so do you like the idea of making a coral garden then?
100%. After seeing this, the hammer arm, you've got me hyped for whatever comes next.
We got 3 different types of Goniopora here.
Do they like heaps of light?
They'll appreciate a lot of light. There's a little snail there we might shift off to a new location. He's going to get in the way. Sorry, little mate. I'll put you down there for now. So these are Goniopora. And they're usually found in really muddy, turbid environments. Cool. So, all right, so we only have 2 more corals to go in, and they are the Samacora, and they are actually an SPS coral, which is a small polyp stony coral. And these guys are really, really, really tolerant of low light areas. So despite being an SPS coral, most people would say that they need a really high light. These guys love low light.
So down lower where there's more shade.
Yeah, I think on the right-hand side here, there's that empty looking space. I reckon they would love it down there. So one of them, they call it outer space Samacora and danger Samacora.
So this one's a danger Samacora. Is that really named after you?
Anyone can name a coral after themselves, especially if they've brought that coral into the world, so to speak. I mean, I didn't really birth it, obviously, Mother Nature did, but that coral was attached to a piece of live rock that was in my very, very first aquarium, and it grew across the live rock in there, and then I started fragging it and propagating it at least 20 years ago. And we shared that amongst our friends, and I actually lost the coral strain, as in my piece died, and because I'd shared it, I was able to get a piece of that original strain back and put it in my aquarium again, and that's a clone of it. So
that's the power of fragging. So that's us all done. What next?
That's all them corals in there, and now we've got to look after them and feed them and take care of them.
Feed them?
Yeah.
Feed them. Corals need to eat as well.
Yeah, of course, just like feeding your fish and everything like that.
Well, what do corals eat?
Well, I actually just happen to carry around coral food. So this is one more little thing. There's the Coral Essentials Coral Power Food, and it's a powdered blend of food. We'll show you how to use that later on. We'll let them settle in for now. When you're feeding the corals, you need to take note of your nutrient levels, your nitrates and phosphates. You also take a look at your coral colors. So too much feeding increases nitrates and phosphates, which can actually brown your corals up and make them less vibrant. And that's because they have an increased zooxanthellae population. And if you have too little food or other stresses like heat and things like that, you can actually bleach the corals, which you've probably heard of bleaching.
Yeah, all over the Great Barrier Reef.
Sometimes, yeah, it comes in waves, and we can have bleaching in patches and otherwise mass bleachings, and then it can recover. So bleaching isn't the end of coral. Bleaching, they can totally recover from.
Right, so it's not like they're dead, because
Yeah.
I've seen videos of people like scuba diving in totally bleached corals.
Yeah.
And then what, maybe 2 years, 3 years later?
It can be a matter of weeks that they recover.
Really?
Yeah, so the algae gets expelled by the coral expels the zooxanthellae out,
Yep.
and it becomes the white flesh of the coral with no color or zooxanthellae left in there. And when the conditions are favorable, the color can actually come back, or the zooxanthellae come back inside the coral and populate the coral again, and they grow. This one's the Duncanopsamia, and they grow like branches, and as they come up, so like this head here was a single head, and as it grows, it splits and becomes 3. So it started out as 1, and then it's become 3, and it's sent off branches as well.
Will that grow like a tree almost?
They kind of grow, yeah, like a tree, but they plate right out. That coral there loves space. They can be a little bit aggressive, but they're really, really attractive. And they use like stinging cells in their tissue called nematocysts to sting and kill other corals that are in their surrounding area for real estate, because it's a tough world out there on the reef, and they need to be very competitive for coral space. We call it coral warfare. They can sting and eat each other out on the reef. They're pretty wild and pretty competitive.
Can I get stung?
Some corals can sting you, yeah. It's particularly if you've got an open cut and it breaks, it's just so they get past that skin barrier. And yeah, some of them are Recordia corals, I think, are probably one of the most painful corals to get stung by. So whenever I'm handling them, I'm really careful. I check my hands for cuts and make sure. That looks really, really good.
Yeah, dude, I'm loving this. This is the kind of impact I was waiting for. All the, 7-8 weeks worth of work we've done so far is really coming together.
Oh, there's that little snail that you spotted earlier. So you're going to put him in? All right, there you go. He'll find his way across the sand, or you can...
Please solve my ugly face, please. Do me a favor.
This Sinularia leather coral would look really good somewhere down in there. It will send up branches like a tree.
So that'll reach skyward or lightward.
Yeah, they're really nice bright green color.
Oh, that one's the one that looks like witch's fingers.
Yeah, so they actually call that a finger leather coral. It's another common name for it. The Sinularia. And this one here is the Sarcophyton. It's another leather coral.
Yep.
They go really well together.
That one's one of my favorites, I reckon.
Do you have a spot for that one? If it's your favorite?
Have a gaze at this. There's sort of a little gap further down, so where yours is, down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's sort of a little...
That's a perfect spot.
Will this grow upwards?
Yeah, they get like a really tall stem on them. Yeah, so those leather corals, they actually have a skeleton inside them. They got spicules, they're called. They're like a tiny little calcium carbonate needles. And then the flesh of the coral, the soft coral, actually holds these little needle-like structures together, like gravel in cement, and that makes the structure of it up. And because those two corals actually grow really fast, like most soft corals do, they make a lot of these spicules, and those spicules are made of calcium carbonate, which use your elements. So now that you've got some soft corals in there, you might actually need to do some more testing and more dosing, because they use a lot.
Right, so they consume the KH.
Yeah, KH, the calcium and the magnesium.
13 extra corals.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to dose.
Yeah, you'll find
way higher.
So you got your tank stable over a couple of days, and now you're going to find over the next few weeks, as these corals settle in and you're feeding them, that these corals are going to use more and more of those primary elements, and you're going to have to test a little bit more and dose a little bit more to accommodate all of that extra element. As you're feeding them and as they're growing too, you're also going to have to keep check on nutrient levels, nitrates and phosphates. Right. And there's also like dissolved organics. There's another third one in there. You can go a bit further with this, but right now let's just focus on, before we too complicate it. When you are doing your normal rounds of weekly testing, we can add those two in there to make sure you're not overfeeding the system too much. Because if you have too higher nutrients, your corals actually stop growing and stop using those other elements.
So what level nitrates do we want this to be sitting at?
Ideally, I'd go 2 parts per million nitrate and 0.03 parts per million phosphate, which is really, really low when you consider compared to planted tanks, which you keep them up a lot higher.
Cool.
All right, so we've only got 4 more corals to put in. These zoanthids, these are the ones I was saying about earlier, that they can actually harm you, and they contain...
You can put those ones in.
All right, chicken. They can contain what's called palytoxin, and it's usually these larger ones here that have the higher probability chance of containing it. So what we don't want to do is what I almost just did then and touch my face after touching corals. So they touch like eyes, nose and mouth, and you can actually get like a pretty severe reaction. It feels like a cold and flu symptom, metallic taste in your mouth, and you can be hospitalized or worse.
What?
But they're really cool, and no tank should be without these corals. So
I'll run the gauntlet, I'm not scared.
all right, what we might do is right in front of your first coral, I think you should find a place for those.
Okay, so
All right, so just hold them by the stems so they don't, yeah, perfect. And another one maybe right down on the front there.
all right, well, can we get rid of this then?
Sure, let's get rid of that. So these corals are starting to open up, but let's help them open up just a little bit more. And I noticed you've got the Illumagic X4 LED light, which has an acclimation mode on it. So if you jump into your app, we can set that and help these corals acclimate by pretty much lowering the light level a little bit,
Okay.
slowly adjust to your light schedule that you've got, because your light schedule is different to my light schedule that I run up in Cairns, and they've traveled a long way.
Yeah.
So now let's sort of ease them into the program that you run, and it'll slowly ramp back up to where you had it over a set amount of time.
What's a good set amount of time? 12 hours?
Yeah, we go about probably a day. I'd go a day.
Okay.
I notice on a lot of those plugs from the coral farm, there's that purple algae, the little patches all around there.
Yeah, yep.
That's that called coralline algae. And some people scrape it up, well, scratch it up with a toothbrush or put it in mortar and pestle even and like make this purple paste, and you tip it in the tank. And that like spreads these spores of the coralline algae, and it helps your rocks to turn purple naturally, and keeping your parameters in check, because that coralline algae is actually a calcium-based algae, just like your coral skeletons. So keeping your calcium, alkalinity, and magnesium in check will actually help that purple algae to cover the white rocks and make the brown algae go away.
You just made this tank look beautiful, dude. Thank you so much for working your magic.
No worries at all. And yeah, like I said, it's all come down to your parameters being in check that we brought these corals here. Keep up the good work with that and keep all your dosing in line, and they will grow for you really well.
All right, Danger. Melbourne's done with you.
All right, it's been fun. Nice knowing you.
Thanks for coming 2 weeks in a row.
See you later, mate. Always welcome up in Cairns.
We tested every single day to hit Shane's targets, and we were rewarded for our perfect stability with a whole bunch of sustainably farmed corals courtesy of Sustainable Reefs.